Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christos Xenofondos, and I'm the Assistant Director for Administrative Services at the Rhode Island Department of Transportation and Chair of AASHTO's Committee on Performance-Based Management. I should say current Chair of the AASHTO's Committee, because today with us, we actually have some past chairs as well. A warm welcome to our panelists and attendees to today's TPM webinar. Thank you for making time to be with us today as we explore this important topic. While we were discussing this webinar and its content, I would be remiss if I don't mention the countless people that we have to be thankful for laying the foundation for us to follow and build upon. So part of the intent of this webinar today was to really take a little bit of a retrospective of where we were, how we started, and the vision that we look for us as we move forward in the future. So some of the people are here with us today as panelists, others are here in the audience. And I hope that during the remarks and panel discussions later on, we'll have the chance to name some of these folks, starting with the leadership group of the Committee on Performance-Based Management that has joined in this common goal of advancing transportation performance management and has created this amazing community of practice and I would say really this transportation performance management family. The Transportation Performance Management Technical Service Program, sponsored by AASHTO in cooperation with Federal Highway, and it's thrilled to co-sponsor this webinar series. This is actually our 22nd bi-monthly webinar on transportation performance management. The aim of this webinar series is to support the broad TPM community by sharing lessons, learned ideas, and knowledge with the transportation performance management community. Our webinar this afternoon will be a conversation with current and former leaders of transportation performance management. We have an exciting lineup of panelists who will be introducing themselves shortly. They will share the original vision and goals, successes and learnings along the ways, and maybe even some personal stories about the implementation of transportation performance management. They will also discuss their hopes for the next phase of TPM and performance-based planning, including sustaining performance management, integrating new and emerging performance areas, and their vision towards community-based performance considerations. For more information on this webinar series, please visit tpm.portal.com and navigate to events in the main menu, and then select TPM webinar series. The AASHTO TPM portal will contain links to today's video and slides, as well as previous webinar archives. And let's just quick review of the agenda. Oh, one slide back, please. To start, Nelson Hoffman, a program manager with Federal Highway, will provide Federal Highway's perspective on the implementation and sustainment of the Federal Transportation Performance Management. Following that, Anna McLaughlin, the Program Director for Transportation Performance Management at AASHTO, will provide the perspective from AASHTO. And then we'll launch into a panel discussion. And following the introductions, we're going to talk about the development of state-level performance measures, performance-based planning and management systems, successes and challenges from the implementation and integration of federal performance management requirements, and of course, the future of performance management and what's next. We will include time for audience questions and answers, so feel free to enter any questions you may have in the chat. If you have any questions that we do not answer, we'll respond offline and post them on the TPM portal event after the page. And first, we'll hear from Federal Highway Administration perspective on the topic from Nelson Hoffman. Nelson is a program manager with the Federal Highway Transportation Performance and Asset Management team, primarily involved with policy and guidance with a focus on growing collaboration with performance management stakeholders. That would be us. He's been with Federal Highway for 17 years at a variety of locations, including the Office of Infrastructure and the Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire division offices. You skipped Rhode Island.
Not for lack of trying.
With that, let me turn it over to Nelson.
Christos, thank you for the introduction. And hello, everyone. As Christos said, I'm Nelson Hoffman from Federal Highways. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to discuss from the federal highway perspective and looking back and looking forward for performance management. And I'm going to start by sharing in the chat a link to the Federal Highways TPM website, which I'm going to share my screen of that website. And the looking back and the current and the looking forward, I think, starts with understanding the TPM goals, the national goals, which, as you have heard those of us from Federal Highways talk about, and others too, the importance of the national goals and the effort to achieve these national goals through the stakeholders' involvement, whether it's state DOTs, MPOs, and local agencies, and moving towards an improved condition and performance of the transportation system. And there are, these are the national goals. The top 6 are the ones that are directly related to the performance measures that we have. I'm not going to read them, but I just want you to refamiliarize yourselves with the national goals and know that that is really the foundation that this is built on. It's in statute. The regulations refer back to the national goals, and the current, bring us very current into 2024. This is the biennial reporting year for performance measures, for the infrastructure performance measures, infrastructure and condition performance measures, and the system performance measures, the PM2 and PM3. And the biennial reporting in the performance management form that is done, tracks back to the national goals. Some of the progress questions that are asked in the PMF and that the state DOTs report on is directly related to the national goals and the achievement of moving forward. Also on this website, I'm sure folks are quite familiar with the state performance dashboard and reports. And that is the dashboard that displays the information that comes through the biennial reporting. And that's the part of the fundamental part of the transparency and accountability. I'm not going to go to individual states, but if you haven't been to this site recently, please take a look. There's always updates and improvements that are being made as the data comes in. It's up to date now, and once we all of us go through the biennial reporting for 24, there'll be some time, but it'll be updated again with the information that has been submitted. So I'm going to close out with part of the future of performance management. I mean, well, the primary goal for performance management is improved condition and performance of the transportation system. However, to get to that is the communication, both internal to agencies, both federal highways, state DOTs, MPOs, local agencies, the internal communication that is necessary to have a performance-based organization. And then there is, like today, interagency collaboration, communication, and sharing. And so that is a very valuable goal, and it's part of the future that we see. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nelson. Do we have any questions for Nelson? Seeing none in chat. Big thank you to Nelson, but in addition to Nelson, who's taking point for Federal Highway today, let me also thank the entire transportation performance management team at Federal Highway, past and present, too many to actually name them, who under the leadership of Peter Stefanos has been really a great partner to work with from the very beginning. So.
Thank you, Christos.
You're welcome. Oh, it thinks I'm speaking in Spanish. Haha. Next up is Anna McLaughlin from AASHTO. Anna is the Program Director for Transportation Program Management at AASHTO, and she's the staff liaison for the Committee on Performance-Based Management and responsible for managing the work with the Committee on Planning and Committee on Data Management and Analytics. In this position, Anna provides leadership on AASHTO's policy and technical activities related to transportation performance management, asset management, planning, and data management. She will provide AASHTO's perspective on the organization's support of TPM over the past 10 years. Anna?
Thank you, Christos. I appreciate the introduction, and hi, everyone. I'm Anna. It's nice to be here. I'm excited to be here and to be part of this discussion today. I've only been with AASHTO for about 9 months, but AASHTO's been at the forefront of transportation performance management advancement for years. Some of the highlights over the years include the first transportation asset management guide that was initiated by AASHTO members and published in 2002. So decades, not just years, decades we're talking about here. Then we had an NCHRP series of research projects focused on comparative performance management to understand best practices of top performing states. That was started in 2006 and continued until 2013 after the passage of MAP 21. The series was created by AASHTO members in partnership with FHWA and TRB. It helped us be better prepared for MAP 21 and covered topics like safety, pavement, bridges, congestion, and many more. The Standing Committee on Performance Management, the predecessor to the current Committee on Performance-Based Management, CPBM, was created in 2009. Kirk Steudle was one of the early chairs of this committee, and Tim Henkel was the most recent chair before Christos. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from both of them today. As these early activities helped us get our transportation community ready for performance-based management, all of these activities helped us get us ready for performance-based management. And now the Committee on Performance-Based Management works with FHWA and the entire transportation community to advance transportation performance management through a wide range of activities, including webinars like this here, peer exchanges, workshops, and a suite of web portals that allow us to share knowledge more efficiently. This is where I'm going to put a plug in for AASHTO's Performance Management Technical Services Program. It grew out of a pooled fund for performance management, and now we have the TSP set up. It's this voluntary TSP that allows us to leverage our resources to provide these valuable activities to state DOTs. I also, if I can share the slide at the same time, I want to personally invite everyone to meet me in St. Louis this September 17th through 20th. Where we'll be having our annual conference. We'll be holding it jointly with the Committee on Planning and the Committee on Data Management and Analytics. Oops. I hope you can make it. I hope to see you all there. In my short time at AASHTO, I've personally been able to see how the practice advances when there's such a vibrant community of professionals who are all working together towards common goals, and I'm really excited to be part of that. The Committee on Performance-Based Management and its members have been key ingredients to the success of TPM in the US. And I'm looking forward to hearing today from past and current AASHTO TPM leaders on how we can benefit from the experience of the past to help lead forward into the future. Thanks, Christos.
Thank you, Anna. I mean, greatly appreciate having you. And of course, we will be there. I hope everybody's there to meet us in St. Louis. So let me add at this point what a difficult task Anna had, since joined AASHTO. She was actually asked to replace the Tom Brady of performance management. Don't tell him I called him that. I mean, the person who led the way in creating the best AASHTO committee, you can tell that to Jim Timon, and a personal friend to many of us. As someone who has been working closely with Anna, I know that the committee is in good hands now and look forward to the next chapter. At the same time, we do miss Matt, and we are forever grateful for his contributions to the advancement of transportation performance management and the many years of support to this committee. It really laid a great foundation for us to build on. Any questions for Anna? Hearing none. Oh, anything on chat? Only on the contracts. So I will turn it over to Yana from SCOPM Partners to facilitate our panel discussion. With a huge thank you to Lori Richter for always being there to help us organize these webinars, and Yana and SCOPM Partners for the continuous support. So Yana?
Thanks, Christos. So let's all start by self-introducing, and if you could just share your role related to TPM, and then after we go through the introductions, we'll then ask a few questions to get the conversation started. Let's start with Kirk.
Thanks, Yana. I had to make sure I hit the unmute button, so I didn't hear the "you're on mute" call from everybody. Hey, so it's great to be with you, and Yana, thanks for reaching out. This is a topic that really got me engaged in the national discussion. So I'm Kirk Steudle. I currently am an independent consultant right now. Previously, I was the director of the Michigan DOT and was a longtime public employee. So I was the director from 2000. Christos is asking me if I'm speaking Spanish now. So I was director from 2006 through 2018. And in the early days, I was very, very involved in asset management. And Anna, as you were describing that initial guide, I was involved with Transportation Asset Management Council in Michigan starting in 2002. And we used that guide and we used the New Zealand guide to really craft where we were going. Soon after that, I was the chair of AASHTO's Asset Management Subcommittee. It was a subcommittee that reported to the Standing Committee on Highways and the Standing Committee on Planning. And it was more so a committee to say, should we look into this? Should we really, what's this asset management thing all about? And should we really be doing this? Now, I had a fantastic co-chair of Neil Peterson, who I know all of you know. And that was a great adventure. And Anna, as you were talking about those subsequent TRB activities, I'd forgotten about all of those that we did along the way. It was interesting as Neil and I were chairing that subcommittee that ultimately turned into an asset management committee and then combined with the Standing Committee on Performance Management. It was an opportunity to bring them all together because I was chair of both of them. And I said, okay, we can stop having two committee meetings. We can have one, and brought them all together. About the similar time, we started the three-way conversation that you just heard in the beginning with Federal Highway and TRB and AASHTO. Before that hadn't started, or that wasn't going on. So we had Dave Geiger at Federal Highway, and we had Sue McNeil from representing TRB. And it's great to see, as I saw this introduction, that group is, there's different faces and different names, but the partnership is continuing. So that's a lot about me and the background. I've been around this topic a long time, and I'm glad to be back engaged. I kind of left the conversation for a while. I left it in Tim's hands, and he took it and ran with it from there. So lots of conversations that we can add. I'll add one more tidbit. That was 2010. that we were at a board of directors meeting in Biloxi, Mississippi. Some of you were there. I know, Yana, you were there, where we were trying to get the board of directors to adopt a resolution on performance management. We needed 36 yes votes. And there weren't really enough states around the table, and there were 4 states that were blocking us, that we wouldn't be able to get it passed. Imagine that, a discussion about adopting something as simple as performance management could not be passed. I ultimately ended up pulling it off the agenda after some wise counsel from some senior people whispering in my ear at lunch. But how we've come a long ways, huh? So that's it for now. We'll get into a lot more as we get into the discussions.
All right, Tim.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Yana, for your invitation to join this panel today. As Kirk said, I agree. This is a topic near and dear to me, and my career path was one that demonstrated that. In brief, I was approximately 38-year employee of the Department of Transportation here in Minnesota. And the last 14 or so years, I was in an executive position responsible for leading and managing the modal planning and program management activities of the department. And on the national front, as this topic and others were near and dear to my heart as well, and were really necessary because of my role within the department, I followed Kirk's large shoes, tried to fill those as the chair and champion of performance-based management, the committee of AASHTO, as well as the committee on planning, chairing that committee, and also heavily involved in the risk management and asset management activities of AASHTO, as well as on the TRB side, and as Christos knows all too well, on the international side with PRC. I'll leave it there so that others can introduce themselves, and then we can get to the questions. Thanks, Yana.
Thanks, Tim. Christos?
Thank you, Yana. I'm really humbled, being here today as the current chair and, being on the same panel with Kirk and with Tim, 2 amazing leaders. Let me tell you a little bit about my journey into performance management, since as the current chair, you know who I am. Never forget, I got called into the director's office with my supervisor a few years back. Mike Lewis was the director at the time, and they had just come back from a quick scan tour that Federal Highway arranged for us to, together with the chief engineer, to go visit, some of the states and experience what it means to be a high-performing DOT by implementing performance management. So I get called up into the director's office, and they look at me and say, "We have a new job for you, and you are so natural at it that you couldn't screw it up even if you tried." So, and that was my introduction to performance management, when we were asked to really build our own capacity, learn about performance management. And then, from there, establish an office and really get performance management going within the state DOT. The very first meeting that I attended was actually the EDC, the original EDC in Boston, where Tony Kane, one of the forefathers of performance management, ran a meeting of AASHTO's subcommittee on organizational management. I think very few people still remember that subcommittee, but it got me hooked on what it means to really adopt performance management and look towards, this organizational excellence and creating this excellent organization. So with that, I'll let we'll move along and to the next, folks that they're here as well.
Jean?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Jean Wallace. I am currently the Vice Chair of the Committee on Performance-Based Management, and I was also the past chair of the Committee on Performance-Based Management's Subcommittee on Risk Management, and also the Vice Chair of that group when it was initiated. And my current side gig, as I call it, is the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Engineer at the Minnesota DOT. But previously, I worked as the Assistant Director of the Modal Planning and Program Management Division for Tim Henkel and with Deanna Belden. And it's easy to drink the Kool-Aid with such great leaders in TPM. Being positioned well, I think, within MnDOT to continue to work in this area and advance TPM. Really just granted another opportunity to get really sucked into AASHTO work as well, and the great partnerships that we have with FHWA and with others to really implement something that was new across the country, but very necessary and easy to see the benefits. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks. Deanna?
Hi, Deanna Belden. I am a longtime Minnesota DOT employee, and I'm lucky to be co-chairing the task force on emerging performance areas as part of the Committee on Performance-Based Management. I have been at MnDOT for 24 of my 27-year career. I started in consulting as a transportation planner after graduating from grad school with a master's degree in transportation planning and economics. And then I was lucky to move over to MnDOT and then became an economic policy analyst where I really am more of an analyst. And so I was pulled into performance measures, and it has been perfect for me as kind of a sweet spot between planning and analysis. And so kind of planning adjacent, not a true, transportation planner, but performance-based planning and analysis of measures. So I've made a wonderful life at MnDOT in this area, and have been fortunate in all my career opportunities to continue to work on super interesting projects. And being involved in AASHTO has been wonderful to be able to talk to my counterparts on the national scale, and I'll learn from one another. I guess I'll stop there. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. William just got called to his commission meeting, so he is not going to be able to join us for this panel. All right, so let's get everybody on screen and get started with the questions. I'm going to direct the first question to Kirk. And Kirk, I do remember Biloxi. I remember Chicago before Biloxi when we were planning for how to get the resolution passed. But I'd like for you to just think about, what you were thinking and the leadership you were working with about the hope for TPM and adoption. And at that time, you didn't know that MAP 21 was going to get passed. I mean, you clearly knew it may be coming, but just reflect on what your hopes were and a bit of what you think. Okay, what's on the screen here?
There is something wrong going on.
Yeah.
Juan Amador Rigo Zaragoza is sharing a whiteboard.
Okay.
Looks like he's trying to take notes.
Yep. I just put Kirk on spotlight.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Good. So, Kirk.
So, Jana, it's interesting to reflect back on that time, and as I think about the 2010, 2012 timeframe, at that point, I had been really deeply involved in asset management, both from the AASHTO level, but also at Michigan DOT, and working with local partners. So I was a true believer in what asset management, now performance management, understanding the first piece was just about the condition of the roads, but then understanding the broader perspective. from a technical background, I'm a civil engineer, and I said, well, this is just the right way to ought to do this, right? We have lots of data, we analyze the data, say this is, what the decisions ought to be, or as Mary Peters used to say, if I only have one more dollar to invest, where should I invest it? So I became a really strong believer that this was the right way that we should be managing the public's assets. And I was anticipating that everybody else would see that same approach, and frankly was quite shocked at essentially the first time I really saw ugly politics pop up at a AASHTO board meeting that prevented that. But we continued, right? We said, look, we're going to continue with this because it's the right thing to do. So that was my interest in pushing it. Just from the understanding of this is good business practice. This is what we should be doing.
All right, thanks, Kirk. So I'm going to turn to Tim now. And Tim, as this was percolating in those earlier years, you were a rising star in your organization, probably a little before you took on the leadership roles you eventually took on at AASHTO and TRB. So from an agency perspective, what were you thinking? What were your hopes? How did you embrace TPM, and what's your observation of those early years of adoption?
Thanks, Hiana. The reality, and I think Kirk can attest to this given his earlier comments, was that we were not unlike many other DOTs, even though not all were in this camp. But the Minnesota DOT had for many years been maturing performance-based management and had stepped into the arena of asset management and risk management. So we had basically been working to mature performance-based management for some time. I stepped into the very large shoes of a name that Kirk will be familiar with, which was Randy Helverson. And Randy had spent numerous years working to change the culture within our own department. So from my perspective, as MAP 21 passed, and as we began to move into the world of rulemaking and all the associated mechanics, was just taking on a leadership role, a facilitation role, and an influencer role when it came to responding to the rulemaking activities early on, as well as continuing what Kirk had started as a partner with Kirk and others to work with AASHTO, FHWA, and the states to really continue to learn from our own internal state perspectives, and to help bring forward our learnings, shared experiences, and influence just how the rules would form to help us to be as consistent as possible with our associated needs. So when it comes to responding to the rulemaking, I can give you a few examples. Like we had to internally at MnDOT respond to MAP 21's NHS performance goals. We went ahead early on and modified our investment programs to conform with the new federal programs. And we also worked to collaborate with our division of labor in the state, our districts, to ensure that the programs that we had set out at the state level were implementable at the district level. And I'm sure many of you faced some of those same types of alignment needs within your own organizations. But foremost in all of this, Hiana, was the opportunity that came from MAP 21 at the state level. We all experience the work that we do with our state legislature, And we, not unlike everybody else, had difficulties over the years convincing our legislature of the need for additional revenue. When MAP 21 came along, it gave us the opportunity to spotlight the work that MnDOT had been doing, but also what MAP 21 was doing at the federal level with performance-based management. Bringing those two together really highlighted not only the need for this, but the result of that, which helped our relationship with our state legislature and the federal government as we continued to pursue funding necessary to meet the tremendous needs that we all have at the state level for transportation. I'll leave it there, Hiana.
Thanks, Tim. So I'd like to, let's spotlight everyone together, and I'm going to pose a question, but and people volunteer to speak up, but also feel free to dialogue with each other, because I think each of your perspectives may prompt a reaction from another person. And the first question is, when MAP 21 first got passed, what were your hopes for its passage and the impact it was going to have in our transportation system and your agencies? And then also, what's your reflection on how it has changed the way agencies do business and changed the results we're seeing? So just reflections on that. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Lori. I'm actually in Philadelphia because they're having the memorial service for Raina Cutler, who many of you who were involved early on in TPM know her. She passed away back in December, and she was really the person who brought many of us together: Karen, Mara, Julie, me. So anyways, I'm going to go to that, but Lori, if I can pass the baton over to you and put everyone in spotlight mode.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
if I can jump in, I'll suggest we go, with Kirk and Tim first, since you were really at the beginning of MAP 21 and we joined, right at that spot.
Go ahead, Tim.
I could barely hear you, Christos. See, can you repeat that, please?
I suggested that we start with you and Kirk.
since you were really at the beginning.
Well, as I said in my opening remarks, performance-based management is an accountability tool, and it is a transparency tool, and it's a tool for accounting, and one that can help us to bring forward the needs of the state and the nation. And so my hope was to perpetuate the work that we were doing at a state level and provide an opportunity for us to have that kind of accountability and transparency and understanding at a national level, and be able to finally find grounds to increase our transportation funds, not just for highways, but eventually for all of the modes that many of our transportation departments are responsible for.
So, Christos, I would echo Tim's comments. To me, it was about what I had seen in Michigan from an efficiency, and to Tim's point about greater funding, knowing that we used all of those systems to push at legislators, many times unsuccessfully, but still to educate them on what was ahead, and really looking to bring that to a national level and say, let's have an honest conversation about where we're headed and how we should be managing this whole network of roads, bridges, and all the different pieces combined with it. That was my hope, was to take something that I viewed as very effective and make it a best practice across the country, even for those that didn't want to do it. that hopefully in 10 years they would look back and go, yeah, that was the best thing we were ever forced to do.
Christos?
So for me, that's really when I rolled up my sleeves, because until then I was, coming along, learning, and MAP 21 starts coming in, and I was asked to be reviewing all of the NPRMs for our office, and I was working very closely with Matt at the time, putting the AASHTO commentary together, and with Paul Dex and Lynn Zanto. And I remember it was like, oh my God, this is our opportunity to tell a story. I was so tired of having all these foundations coming out with reports year after year and getting called into the director's office and explain this report. And I would have no clue where they got their data and how they cooked it, what spices they used in order to come up with the numbers. I'm like, we can tell a story. This is great. And then the apprehension sets in. Oh my God, the federal government now wants us to be reporting this. And I know they're saying they're not going to penalize us now, but can we really trust the government? Because it's really us, so can we trust ourselves that we're not going to penalize ourselves? So it was like this, okay, so this is great from one perspective, while at the same time, so how do we build these buffers against some of the, potential threats of penalizations or going down the road of worst case instead of, really, following a true asset management approach.
Jean and Deanna, what were your thoughts and hopes for the country with MAP 21?
So I think I had numerous thoughts, and I recall even back in the AASHTO language when there was initial talk about pavement management systems, and I was thinking about, this is great because it'll bring consistency and transparency and integrity and veracity in how we measure what we're doing. And I think we were really hoping that this would lead to, as others have said, the clear demonstration of infrastructure need and priority across the system. And that could be clearly associated with additional funding, right, in the right places, and ultimately see better asset outcomes, better pavement and bridge condition, as well as, overall better safety outcomes for our roadways too. And ultimately, thinking about the big picture, how improved asset management systems are just more clearly tied to those decision-making processes in our investment decisions. So I think those are some of the big hopes that I had going in.
Thanks, Jean.
So for me, I'd say once MnDOT started with performance-based management and performance-based planning, it was clear we were not going to go back because it's just such good practice and was working so well for us. So when MAP 21 passed, then, the idea that all states would be engaging in, performance management in some way was a welcome development. One of the things I think that, though, what we have learned over the past 10 years is that performance management is necessary, but not sufficient for good management. It's really good to have it as a tool, but performance is one part, one piece of decision making. And so we have to be sure to not pretend or assume that it would be the only one. And so that's, just knowing that, is helpful. Thanks.
I think that's a really good segue into the next question that I have for all of you. So if we did have to do it all over again collectively, what would you change in the legislation and how states have responded?
So I'll start. One thing that as this was rolling out that concerned me, and this was the pushback, as Christo said, this is going to be a marker that Federal Highway is going to measure us against. And what really concerned me was there was this one size fits all approach that I thought, okay, that's not right because we're all in different stages and we all have to learn at different paces. The other piece that really concerned me was I knew that while we were collecting a lot more data and using it for decision makings, I didn't want to put that into the official guide. I didn't want to submit that to Federal Highway because I didn't want to have it used against me for things that were not required. So I advocated for a guide that simply met the requirements, written requirements of the law. I said, do that, and then we'll do an appendix of all the other things that we're going to look at. And that way, in case I got hit over the head by how come you haven't done something that, you know, in some other area that nobody is even doing, and you get penalized for it, I was still safe. So I would have, I guess, preferred a little bit lighter hand and a more leveled approach to how it got rolled out.
Thanks.
Let me continue on that stream that you started, Kirk, because in retrospect, I wish we'd have taken a little bit more time in the development of MAP 21 in order to get a few things, I don't want to say right because it would it would imply that we got it wrong, but in order to get a few things better. One of which is this additional flexibility that we need in recognition that the states are unique. We are very unique, and while some of us are more similar to some than others, and there is some groupings of the states, every state is dealing with unique situations, and we implemented this cookie cutter approach that did not really take that into consideration. The other part that I actually want to say that I would actually probably would like to see it happen the same way. I think there was a tremendous collaboration with Federal Highway before the passage of MAP 21 in working together in trying to push things forward. And that is something that it was really refreshing to be able to, to do that, even though at some point it reached the point where it went to NPRM and then Federal Highway couldn't talk to us anymore. That was the frustrating part, but that's the frustrating part of any federal rulemaking. Tim?
Adding to the earlier statements and adding on to my legislative comments that I made earlier, one of the areas that I think is of concern was the confusion that different reporting systems have for legislators at the state level in particular. And so there is a need, and it probably goes to a future question here, but that there is a need for our federal partners to help us, to help others, especially legislators at the state level and probably congressional members, to understand that states have a big system and only a portion of that system is federal in nature, and the reporting that's required by our federal partners is only a piece of that puzzle. And the more we can do to look at this holistically, the better off we will be at the state level, and I think at a national level as well.
Jean and Deanna, are there any other challenges specifically that either of you would like to highlight in addition to the ones that we've heard already from Kirk, Christos, and Tim?
Well, I think Kirk, Christos, and Tim did a fantastic job of covering some of this big picture issues. But I'll just say, as much as I agree that it was important to take the time in advance of MAP 21 and beginning in MAP 21, it felt like it took a long time just to implement too. And that's the flip side of all of this, is I wish it could have moved a little bit more quickly, but certainly understand the rulemaking process is a big piece of that. And we couldn't have done it without a lot of conversation and coordination. That does take time. I kind of wish that we could have focused more on incentives and less on the punitive aspects of reporting. Because think of all the externalities that influence our reporting. Think of everything that's happened over the past 5 years. And, I'm kind of glad that we've maybe moved beyond that a little bit, but, to the point of the pavement and bridge, the measures that we have, the national measures, are just a portion of our system, to what Tim said. And it's really hard to make those trade-off decisions accurately and with the best intent in mind when we're being forced kind of in one area to maintain those measures.
I have something to add as well, and people who talk to me a lot will recognize this point. But I find that the challenge in one of the biggest challenges, and what I would have liked to have been able to do differently, is the different approach to target setting that the federal measures take compared to how MnDOT does it. But the federal targets meaning to be short-term expected outcomes versus more intuitively what they have meant to MnDOT, representing the achievement of a goal, outcome, or objective. And we differentiate between performance targets and projected outcomes because what we want to happen may not be the same as what we plan for. What we want to achieve are outcomes and to meet strategic objectives, but what we plan to do is to execute our fiscally constrained plan or budget. So we would meet a target if we are fully funding something. And but these are frequently not the same, but the expected outcome and our target, but it helps explain how we can still be doing a good job managing our system to a specified performance level while still recognizing that the outcome is not exactly what we desire. And so with the federal targets, we're setting most of them, at least, as short-term expected outcomes based on a program of projects that's already established. And when we miss, because maybe a big bridge fell into poor condition sooner than we expected, we have to, we submit a paper about what we're going to do differently to meet the targets. But in reality, it's just that our forecast was off, or the bridge fell into poor condition sooner than we expected. And so we really are just going to continue to try to manage our assets the best we can. And we're always working on improving that. But it's sort of a disconnect there. And one of the things we did to try to alleviate this confusion between how MnDOT, what we call our targets versus the federal targets, is we put together a one-pager showing the difference, explaining the difference between the two, but confusion still crops up. In fact, even just this week with an MPO going to their board to get approval for supporting our state targets, the federal targets. And there was a question, well, wait, why don't those match what's in the statewide multimodal transportation plan? And so it just shows me that I got to do continuing education, even with longtime MnDOT employees, for example, because that confusion will crop up if it's not in their everyday work like it is for me. Thanks.
Let me add, this is where we actually, at the beginning, we were borrowing from each other. And, we were measuring things internally because we had started doing our own performance management at RIDAD, reporting to the governor's office. And then all of a sudden we had to, look at things differently. And for us, a great resource was actually Daniela in Washington DOT, because she had put together this, 2-pagers, if I recall correctly, explaining every single performance, federal performance measure. And, we use them for AASHTO, we use them for a lot of different ways to kind of educate everybody as to what we needed to be doing, in the future.
All right, so let's move on. Perhaps a philosophical question. Has federal TPM made a difference? And this is a question for everyone. Kirk,
So,
would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I would say unequivocally yes, because if you just take the conversation we just had, Anna was talking about how you pull all these pieces together. 20 years ago, that conversation was not happening. So to me, this has made a difference because we've elevated the thinking of how we manage this massive system that we have in a much more coordinated and efficient manner. It absolutely is well worth the effort.
Tim, I see you nodding your head.
All I can say is ditto.
Christos?
I'm going to add a lot more than just ditto, because it's really our own evolution that was forced by performance management, and through this implementation of TPM that pushed us all into beyond each individual performance measure that we have, beyond pavement and bridge condition, beyond safety, to actually start looking at the bigger picture. Kirk knows this, but there has been this evolution in our agencies where we went from these, pure infrastructure-based agencies where we care about the condition of our assets. But now we have evolved where we're talking about public value creation, and Deanna knows this very well because she's actually leading the PRC working group working on public value creation, where we're talking about our North Star being society and our people, and not necessarily the bridge itself. And I think part of this evolution that we have seen, it's because of the implementation of the performance management and that desire for us to really becoming better and better at what we do.
Yeah, I was going to say I was thinking along the same lines as you, Christos, that public value creation aspect of all of this is become so much more prominent in how we make our decisions. And I think it's TPM has really increased our maturity in measures. It's increased our maturity in asset management. It's increased our maturity in data quality, and ensuring that we're using new technology to collect that data as well. It's really brought a lot of opportunity for us, I think. And at the same time, it feels like we're just at the very tip of the iceberg on all of this in terms of where we could be taking risk management and utilizing asset management and decision making, and just really making an appreciable improvement in system condition, and especially in reducing fatalities as much as we're able to in a proactive way.
I'll add something that seems small compared to what the others are saying, but is also important, is that the federal measures brought us the NPM RDS data set that is giving us reliability data on the federal system. And that is not something we had before. And for sure, we think reliability, and then actually even moving toward accessibility, is going to be more important than our traditional congestion measure. So bringing us that data was wonderful and amazing. And in fact, so we report on that for the federal measures, but additionally for MnDOT reporting, we've combined interstate and non-interstate NHS into one, and then looking at it by geographic area, feeling like the interstate and non-interstate NHS in the metro area, for example, is more like each other than, separating out interstate and non-interstate NHS. So we love that, and now have the opportunity to, improve our portfolio of performance measures due to that.
Yeah, so this kind of transitions into my next question, which is some of perhaps the surprising things that have come out of federal TPM. Jean, I know you talked about public value creation, advancing maturity in so many different areas, data maturation, and again, kind of echoed by Deanna. Any other surprises related to federal TPM?
I would just say that Jean and Deanna will giggle when I say there's a triangle here of asset performance and risk management that help us to be successful in the transportation systems that we provide. The biggest surprise to me is one component of that triangle being strengthened because of its relationship to the other two. That's risk. And I think risk management has been elevated as an important component of decision-making and reporting that probably couldn't have happened if we hadn't collectively looked at performance management and its relationship to asset and risk.
I think that's an excellent point, Tim. And the other part, I think, was the elevation of data as king. It really, performance management really made it very clear that data is king, and we are all sitting on extremely valuable data that can help us, manage our, our assets and can help us tell our story.
Kirk, anything else that surprised you about federal TPM?
No, I think I think everybody's kind of hit them. I don't know that I have anything to
Okay.
particularly add there.
Okay. So I'd like to ask a question now of Kirk and Tim. So you both held TPM leadership roles in the past, and had worked closely with AASHTO during that time. What role did AASHTO play in advancing TPM in the past 10 years? And if we start to think forward in time to sustaining TPM, what role should it play in the future?
So I'll let Tim, who was the guardian for the last 10 years, speak to that piece. I will tell you that my overall comment is that AASHTO needs to be the strong voice that pushes the processes and procedures that are workable at the state level. And they're the conveners that bring practitioners together. And AASHTO's voice is so valuable. Now, I will add to that, I think TRB's voice in what's possible, what else can we be doing, is equally important. And the third leg of this triangle is also federal highway. The collaboration that started early on is one that frankly has to continue. So the lessons that Gene, you just talked about are ones that have to go into the next reauthorizations. Okay, we're going to talk about performance management. Here's some things we need to do. Here's how we need to get them right next time. Or not right. Here's how we need to make them better, using Christos's word. But Tim, you can talk about the last 10 years.
AASHTO has been instrumental, critical to the success of performance-based management at the national level, at the state level, and frankly, for many of us, even at the local level, a whole nother topic. It has been instrumental in helping the practitioners, the policymakers, in the learning curve, in working to implement MAP 21 and establishing the rulemaking, in the development of the tools that are necessary, and the practices through the development and updates of the guidebooks that help us to do the work. And most importantly to me has been meaningful collaboration, and one that brought us together with our federal partners. Kirk stated earlier the challenges that existed in the initial phases of MAP 21. Without AASHTO, that partnership would have been incredibly difficult and challenging. And I think going forward, AASHTO can continue to be a solid footing to that partnership as all of the partners move forward.
Hey, Lori, I want to add something there. Christos, you kicked off the webinar and you talked about the contribution of Matt Hardy. I will tell you from my observation, Matt also was a great person to push. He had a nice way of saying, okay, what can we do more of this? And so he would listen a lot, but he would also push to be a bit more innovative. And Anna, I know you have really big shoes to fill, but from what I've seen, I think you're up to the task.
And I did add Anna to the chat as well. Christos?
Yep. Thank you, Lori. You want us to take the next question?
Yeah, and so as current leaders, Christos, Deanna, Jean, what do you think is AASHTO's role really in advancing TPM practice, and how do you see that evolving in the future? What can we collectively do to make that more impactful?
And I asked Lori that we're gonna go Deanna, Jean, Anna, and then me for this
Okay.
one. That way I
Sounds-
can steal all of your ideas.
Sounds good. Deanna?
Okay, okay. I have one thing that I was going to add to what Jean might say, but I think it's really important the way we can advance research as the main source of problem statements for NCHRP. And so, and then in conjunction with, working in the emerging performance areas, and we've been really successful in getting these problem statements funded. And so, of course, lots of asset management and risk and resilience work as well. But this is a big deal that we actually get to work together and figure out what we should submit for research. And then also just in our Committee on Performance-Based Management, I guess I would presume maybe the rest of AASHTO would be like this as well, but the idea that we have these subcommittees and we can respond by forming a task force when there's a new area that comes up. It said, hey, emerging performance areas seems to be a gap. And so we were able to form a task force, and now we're working on that, and it's becoming very fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, thinking to what Tim and Kirk just said, I think the current role, the continuing role is more of the same, right? We all learn best when we learn from each other. And I think what's great about what we've created here is this incredible community of practice that's really been able to share a lot of lessons learned, a lot of experience. We talk through questions and unknowns and uncertainties and risks and everything. And AASHTO has been right there the entire time, facilitating those great conversations and helping to advocate for state DOTs who might not all be in the same place. And at the same time, we need to meet the same end goal. So I think that's been something that we really look to AASHTO to continue to help provide.
Now, Christos, I want to make sure I follow your order that
Yes.
you're looking for here. So
So Anna is one of the current leaders now in AASHTO.
okay. So Anna, from your perspective, what more should be done to be more impactful? Should or could be done?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I think this has been just enlightening hearing this conversation today, and this history is super helpful for me. And as someone who comes from a background working at a DOT, I understand that value of connecting with your colleagues across the country in these same roles at other organizations. We want to know what the best practices are, right? We want to be able to share that. And that's where, for me, past and present now in this role is really the value of AASHTO. It really is how do we bring these like-minded people that kind of have this common goal together? And I'm learning there are struggles. It's hard. We don't always all have the same opinion, the same outlook, the same approach. But there is still there's value in that process, and coming to a conclusion, and what are our top priorities right now? We're starting with CPBM. Lots of people on this call. You're all going to be getting more follow-up emails from me about reauthorization. How can we as professionals in performance management feed into the AASHTO process to be able to lobby Congress for what our priorities are? And I think that's really important. And so we'll continue to do that. And I can't it's not me, it's everyone here. It's all of these amazing volunteers within the state that are providing this information, this guidance, and really doing the heavy lifting. So I appreciate that.
Christos.
I mean, everything was so well said. There is not a lot left, which is why I left myself flat. But let me say something that I started with. This is not only a community of practice, but really has been a family where people come together, and as transportation professionals, we have this common goal of continuously improving our agencies and continuously improving our assets and the public value that we create for our citizens and our society. When we talk about performance-based management, however, and AASHTO, we need to recognize and separate the work that we do to meet the nationally required transportation performance measures from federal highway and the visionary work that we need to be doing as AASHTO, as all of the states, to continue advancing the work that we are doing. That is critically important for us. It's the evolution that I mentioned earlier. Some of us are really fortunate to be working on this. Kirk is one of the people that not only he started performance management, but now he is leading us into the transport agency of the future, something that we are also working with, through PRC and AASHTO and TRB. What should our agency evolve to be in the future? And AASHTO and the Committee on Performance-Based Management provides the platform for all of us to get together and have this conversation, and not just alone, but in collaboration with our other partners, with the Transportation Research Board, with the academic community, with the private industry, because we are all in this as transportation professionals working together.
So Anna mentioned reauthorization. So given what we've learned from the past 10 years, what should our priorities be for the next reauthorization regarding TPM?
Show me the money. It's time to make the linkage clearer and for our federal partners to take the work that's been done and to use it to influence those that can make our transportation system a reality. And I think that's one area of focus always, but now it can be a greater focus because we have the tools to do that.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I'd agree with Tim. Look, we all the professionals have done what Congress asked them to do. Now it's time for Congress to do their professional part.
Christos?
So I think one of the successes of MAP 21 and the national performance measures was that it really allowed us to tell a better national story. And perhaps we can give a little bit of credit to the national performance measures for convincing Congress to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law with such a huge amount of money coming to everyone and understanding the need to increase what comes to the states. But as we look at the reauthorization, I think this is a great opportunity for us to also, try and carve a little bit more of a visionary path towards of looking at stop counting widgets and look at performance measures that they are strategic in nature, that allow us to make the right decisions, that they are not in conflict with the operational measures that we use, in our states, and that bring everything together in a nice, package for Congress to be looking at it and say, this is where our money is going. And yes, we do get value for what we pay.
Jean?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was thinking about the exact same things as, funding would be a great outcome of reauthorization, and something that funding specifically for ways to grow and improve where we are now, and how far we've come, acknowledging how far we've come. I don't necessarily want to advocate for new performance measures to be added to the list, but I think there needs to be this acknowledgement that we do own a much broader system, and we still have to make those trade-off decisions and have funding available for those other asset categories that don't necessarily have required measures. So in addition to pavement and bridge, and we just need ways to be able to accurately make those trade-off decisions and investments based on good data. The other thing I think we just need to continue to focus on is safety, and noting that, Secretary Thompson, as AASHTO president this year, has really put a focus on 3 areas: maximizing the federal investment of IIJA, safety, and workforce. And I think more than anything, we could really specifically focus on safety, and we could be doing more across with our partners in the Committee on Safety to develop some stronger measures specifically in those areas that are just really going to move the needle in building on what we've learned, working across other communities, making sure that we're taking care of our vulnerable road users, and seeing better outcomes overall.
Indiana.
Did you just call on me? I don't have anything to
Yes.
add. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah. No, I show me the money and everything that Jean said. Thanks.
I could add just a couple of tidbits that are a little more in the weeds.
Certainly.
As an advocate of research throughout my career, research is woefully underfunded. I think performance management has grown and matured to the stage where we understand that there's more to learn, and there are many more modes and operational aspects of our businesses that could come together through research to help us to do a better job. So bring on more money for research to help us with what AASHTO is going to bring forward that's necessary to have the tools, policies, wherewithal to do the work that is necessary to be done as we move forward. And finally, while operations has been a component, but not a strong component of performance management, at least visibly, and there is research underway in that area, operations is a significant component of the work that we do. And so more work needs to be done at the federal level to bring forward the funds for data, as well as the funds to help us operationalize and operate our system. And that's another area that's not only funding related, it's acknowledgement of the asset management role and the operations role across the various modes that needs to be recognized and funded as we move forward with performance-based management. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the chat to see if we have any additional questions. Zoe, I don't know if you can unmute yourself, was your question for the panel? Did you have a question for the panel? Let's see if I can unmute you.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts as to how we keep this from becoming a closed or too steep entryway, because we need to continue to bring people into this. And I don't participate that much in AASHTO, and it's a lot of acronyms of these names. And just in general, when my opinion is when we can use more meaningful names, it's useful for us, and it's also an easy way to decrease the entry path for others. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as to how we keep this accessible to next generations and bring them in.
I think it's continued education.
We have to recognize that we actually have to deal with multiple levels at the same time. We have to be dealing with we have to be having conversations at a high enough level for the people that have been involved from the very beginning, and they are advancing the conversation while at the same time bringing in new people and helping them build capacity, because we all at some point started at the beginning. And it's very important to be bringing in the new part. the TPM, with the Transportation Performance Management Portal, the AASHTO TPM portal, has tremendous amount of resources, that can help bring, entry-level people and people new to the conversation along, because these are things that we have built over the last 10, 15 years since we've all started. And, all this work that has been created, it's available and it's there for everybody, to access and share freely. The other part that I would encourage is, have a lifeline. I only see one of my lifelines here. When I first started, I had two people on my lifeline, Mara Campbell and Daniela Bremer. Anything that I had, I would pick up the phone and call one of the two of them. And then Mara decided to retire, and then my lifeline became Karen Miller. So, and they're still, and they're still part of who the lifelines are. I mean, this is why we create this community, so that you have access to people, whether they are neighboring states or all the way across the continent, to just call them up and say, hey, how did you do this? I need some help. Can you walk me through it?
Thank you so much, Christos. So I do want to really thank our panel today, Kirk, Tim, Christos, Jean, Deanna, and Anna added you to the panel for our for one of our questions. I really want to thank you all for your participation today. We really appreciate your insights, your history, your leadership today and yesterday, and your leadership tomorrow. So thank you all very much for your participation. And with that, I will turn it back over to Christos, who will wrap us up for the day.
Thank you, Lori. And again, I also want to thank our panel. Great, really having this conversation, particularly as we're actually getting ready to start working on the reauthorization and on the AASHTO white papers coming out of our committee, and what we would like to recommend as part of the next reauthorization. Big thank you to AASHTO and Federal Highway, and all of our speakers for today. Thank you for everybody for being here. And as we mentioned earlier, all of the material is available at the TPM portal. Lori has shared the slide with the address, and Anna has dropped the active link on the chat. We hope that you join us for the next Committee on Performance-Based Management and TPM TSP quarterly meeting on June 6th. Where we're going to be talking about the AASHTO Safety Action Plan. Jean highlighted earlier, and talked about how important it is to use performance management together with the Safety Action Plan, and to look at strategies of, helping us achieve what we had started, towards, Vision Zero. Keep in touch. If you are not part of our, email list, please drop us a line and we'll add you, so that you could be receiving information, from us, from the committee. And above all, we need active volunteers. AASHTO, just like TRB, are based on us volunteering our time. And the more talented people that we bring around, the better product and the better value we will be providing to all of us. Don't forget, meet us in St. Louis in September. And thank you again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Kirk and team, great seeing you again. Jean and Deanna and Anna, thank you again. Lori, huge thank you again for all the support.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, Lori. Thanks, everybody.
See everybody.
Thanks.